someone decided to keep silence and not talk about actual things that are happening. I was crying out everything I had inside myself, and it made me actually sign up for therapy. Maybe that's the reason why I'm also still not yet. I've never been into a relationship. Welcome back to another episode of Reclaiming Her Era, the most empowering female-led podcast you can find. And I'm your host, Corey. And today we're going to talk about slightly vulnerable topic, I'd say, especially for me. But it's been a while that I was thinking to introduce a kind of new format to this podcast by exploring some of the books that I was recently reading. And today we're going to do actually that, because the book that I'm going to cover today, it's not an education book, it's a novel, but it did a lot of impact on me that I think it will bring a lot of value to you as well. The thing is, last year I went with my friend to see the adaptation of this movie on the screen in cinema, and I was not expecting much because I was thinking it's just a movie based on a book. What can you expect? Like a breakup story? Like, you know, romantic love affair, whatever. Because prior watching that movie, I was not researching even like what kind of movie we're going to, because my friend said it's all over social media, like you haven't heard about it. It's like, no, like I didn't check what's on the screen right now. And she said like it's a great movie, you have to watch it and everything. So I was just expecting it would be like a girly novel about like a breakup or love affair, whatever. Because I didn't watch the teaser, I didn't watch the trailer before, I didn't read what it's about. And when I watched it, I was not expecting anything at all. But after coming out of the cinema hall, I was crying out everything I had inside myself, and it made me actually sign up for therapy. So then afterwards, my friend also said, like, I have a book, so you have to read it. And then, here we go. I started reading it. So here we go. This book is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. If you have been living under the rock and you haven't heard about it, as me prior of the movie coming out to the cinema, it's about domestic violence. So by starting this podcast, my aim was to help as many women as I can. And I think domestic violence is such a big topic that's now being talked about more and more. And I think together we can really fight against it. And we have to make a difference. And I feel this book, like the hustle, the hype that was created around this book and this movie, already did a lot of changes. And I feel there's still more things to do. So right now I would love to read some of the pages from this book. So it's gonna contain a bit of spoilers. So if you haven't watched the movie or you didn't read the book yet, you will have some spoilers. But so I recommend you first to get to know the movie or the book. But I'm gonna read some of the quotes and citations that really cut deep to my heart because of some personal reasons we also experienced in my family, and my insights and how I see the main character, Lily Bloom, changing and reflecting on this. So here we go. It Ends With Us, Colleen Hoover. So one of the first pages that I marked down in my notebook is 110. And this is the episode which Lily wrote down in her diary. It's about her childhood and the incident they had within their parents. So here we go. He was choking her, Ellen. I might cry just thinking about it. He was yelling at her, staring down at her with so much hatred. Something about not having respect for how hard he works. I don't know why he was so mad. Really, because all I could hear was her silence, while she struggled to breathe. The next few minutes are a blur. But I know I started screaming at him. I jumped on his back, and I was hitting him on the side of his head. Then I wasn't. I don't really know what happened, but I'm guessing he threw me off him. I just remembered 1 second I was on his back, and the next second I was on the ground, and my forehead hurt like you wouldn't believe. My mom was sitting next to me, holding my head and telling me she was so sorry. I looked around for my dad, but he wasn't there. He'd gotten into his car and drove off after I hit my head. My mom gave me a rug and told me to hold it to my head because it was bleeding. And then she helped me to her car and drove me to the hospital. On the way there, she only said one thing to me. When they ask you what happened, tell them you slipped on the ice. When she said that, I just looked out of my window and started crying because I thought for sure this was the final straw, that she would leave him now that he had hurt me. That was the moment I realized she'd never leave him. I felt so defeated, but I was too scared to say anything about it. So we're starting really tough, with a really tough episode here, right straight from the beginning. But I'm sorry for being so emotional and bringing up this, but like the last sentence she said that she was really hoping it would be a last thing for her mother to see that this man is hurting her child in order to leave him, and this didn't happen. And she just said, whatever they ask you in the hospital, tell them you slipped on the ice. Unfortunately, I also can relate so much of having these secrets inside the family that you're not allowed to speak to others. And about all the things that happened in my family, I've been just open to my friends recently, because before that, I also felt the urge of my mother to protect our family, not to share too much about things happening so people don't have a bad reputation about our family, or there will be not other things involved. I really hope for this episode you don't relate that much as I do, but it really got me straight to the heart. But it's sad reality that many women that live for domestic violence, they choose not to have bad reputation about their family and keep secrets inside the house instead of sharing that. So we actually don't know how many women struggle with this, even though things happen between generations, like the father of Lily hit her and mom was silent. It's still happening, and this is why this generational trauma is being passed on to the next generation, because someone decided to keep silence and not talk about actual things that are happening. So I hope you don't encounter these situations, but if something like this happens in whatever environment, it's important not to keep the silent, but actually speak your truth. That's the hard way I learned about it. My therapist used to say that, like, the more things you cope within yourself, it's like a balloon. So you blow it, you blow it, you blow it until it goes so big that it's about to just explode. But if you release the tension little by little by sharing the problems, even tough things about your family, just don't bomb other people with your problems like straight away, but try to find a comfortable way. Like, it's hard to talk about comfortable way to share about domestic violence if it happens, but it's important to share the things and find a solution, like, because silence won't make any difference. So that's why we need to share these things and not keep them within the family as a secret, especially if it's passing to another generation. I'm sorry, guys, the first episode was really traumatic. The next one is kind of more hopeful, I'd say. So the next page I marked down in my notes is 137. And this is just one of the sentences I really loved that is there. This is good. Yes, I'm crying, but it feels better. This is just human nature. Healing an old wound, preparing for a fresh new layer. That's all. So this sentence specifically I wrote down because sometimes we don't realize how much we need to release our emotions, and we think like, I don't want to come back to my old problems because it doesn't matter, like they're in the past. But if you didn't let them go, if you didn't cry enough for them, if you didn't release all the tension your body had for whatever happened in the past, you won't be open to new life, to new layer, as she said. So in this way, it's really important to release whatever emotional baggage you have from the past experience and just let it go. Because if you still hold these emotions from the past and carry them to the future, you're gonna repeat the same pattern. You're gonna do the same thing. It's not gonna heal you. So if whatever happens, if you feel like crying, don't stop yourself. Cry out all the tears you have for whatever happens. Scream out, shout out, do everything that you need to release all the pain, and then be open to have a new layer in your life. Yeah, so this episode was a bit more hopeful, but we're coming back to Diary of Lily, which usually, again, describes another accident in her family, which is one of the, I think, tough moments, like a childhood experience, and have this memory as an adult. Page 154. I will never forget his word when he said, "You want attention? I'll give you some fucking attention." And that's when she got real still and stopped fighting him. I heard her crying, and then she said, "Please, be quiet, Lily's here." She said, "Please be quiet. Please be quiet while you rape me, dear." Ellen, I didn't know one human was capable of feeling so much hate inside one heart. And I'm not even talking about my father. I'm talking about me. So yeah, that was the episode of where Lily witnessed this inside the house that were happening between her parents. But also the next page, 156, is the response of her mom to the situation, which really hurts so much. I shook my head and could feel the tears stinging my eyes. "Mom, he was trying to rape you." She ducked her head and winced when I said that. She shook her head again and said, "It's not like that, Lily. We're married. And sometimes marriage is just... You're too young to understand it." It got really quiet for a minute. And then I said, "I hope to hell I'll never do." That's when she started to cry. It broke me. So this is, I think, one of the hardest episodes in this book in general, because, and again, her mother is just trying to cover up everything, just saying, this is just what married people do. And if you grew up in a household with domestic violence and your parents saying, "I just what married people do, it's just marriage, it's just things between women and men," you grew up believing that this is an actual normal behavior within men and women. So you see this as a normal behavior, and you don't think that there is like another kind of families with healthy relationships. And unfortunately, this is also the thing that up to this day prevents me to have any relationship with guys. And because simply I did not have an example of a relationship in my family, and I don't know how it is to feel different, because say maybe up to 20 years old, I was thinking this is normal behavior between married people, because this is all I saw between my parents, and my parents also would say, yeah, this is just what married people do. And like before I started talking with other people, with other friends of mine who had normal families, like healthy relationship between their parents, loving, caring, I thought it's actually like a normal behavior, and this is what you should expect when you get married. Of course, she wanted to protect Lily, but this is one of the most traumatic things you could say to your daughter, because she would expect that's how the marriage works. Maybe that's the reason why I'm also still not even married, but I've never been into a relationship, because I don't see yet, that's I'm working with a therapist, but I don't see yet how the healthy relationship between men and women could actually be if you didn't have the actual example in your family. So the next episode is from page 186, and this is where we come back to an adult Lily. So we're not talking anymore about her diary and her childhood memories, but this is one of the first accidents that happened in her adulthood. This is a really short sentence that I wrote down in my notebook, but after the things happening here, she says, I start shaking my head, wanting the last 15 seconds to go away. 15 seconds. That's all it takes to completely change everything about a person. 15 seconds that we'll never get back. here, why I marked this down is because it doesn't matter how long you've been together. It doesn't matter how much time you spend on building something together, like a precious memory. You could spend a lot of time, years together building this relationship. But if accident like this happened, it would happen within 15 seconds, just like a small amount of time comparing to years or months or like all the time you spend together. But just 15 seconds can ruin the whole perception and the whole thing that you've been building up together. So in time-wise, it doesn't matter how much time you spend together, but just like the small accident would last just 15 seconds could break everything you've been building for years. And yet again, after things that happened, I'm not gonna spoiler too much if you still haven't watched the movie, but yet 2 pages apart, 188, she's trying to cover things up again, saying, "He's not like my father. He can't be. He's nothing like that uncaring bastard." We're both upset and kissing, confused and sad. So here she repeats the same pattern as her mom, covering up the man she loved, just saying, "Oh, he's not like my father. He's not gonna repeat the same thing." Even though it's the first accident, okay, you may forgive him for first accident, but you're again covering him up. Like, things like this should not happen in first place. And the second place, you should not cover up someone who hurt you, especially when you have experience before with your father and you're just trying to convince yourself, you're more convincing yourself, not that covering him up, that it's not the same thing, it's not going to happen again, it's not like your father. In the next chapter, after this accident happens, she meets Atlas, her teenage childhood love. And when he sees her in this condition, after everything happened with the bruise on her eye, he says, "Leave him." Leave him? Jesus, he thinks this is something else entirely. I take a step forward and shake my head. He's not like that, Atlas. It wasn't like that. Ryle is a good person. He tosses his head and leans it forward a little bit. Funny, you just sound like your mother. And she still rejects this thought that she's like her mother, just trying to convince herself she is not, because she doesn't want to believe she's repeating the same patterns that her parents had. Then coming to page 146, she has this inner discussion of herself, trying to figure out how this pattern of being daughter of her father, who was abusive, came out into this perception, how she sees her relationship right now. I have to remind myself of those things. Sometimes the girl inside of me, the daughter of my father, is really opinionated. She tells me I shouldn't have forgiven him. She tells me I should have left him the first time. And sometimes I believe that voice. But then the side of me that knows Ryle understands that marriages aren't perfect. Sometimes there are moments that both parties regret. And I wonder how I'd feel about myself had I just left him after the first incident. He never should have pushed me, but I also did things I wasn't proud of. And if I haven't just left, would that not be going against our marriage walls? For better or worse, I refuse to give up on our marriage that easily. Do you remember what her mom said? That's how the marriage works. You should protect your marriage. You should not go against your marriage walls. And she does exactly the same thing, protecting her marriage and thinking it's not like the relationship between her father and her mother. This is exactly the same thing that her mom told her in the young age, that's stuck in her head, thinking that she has to protect her marriage. And she admits that he pushed her, but she also tries to blame herself for other things that, oh, but I also did bad things, so I deserve this. So she makes herself think that she deserves that. And then she says, I'm a strong woman. I've been around abusive situations my whole life. I will never become my mother, but she is her mother. I believe that 100%, and Ryle will never become my father. I think we needed what happened on the stairs to happen so that I would know his past and we'd be able to work on together. So she says she had to go for this abusive incident to make their marriage work. Wow. Could you believe that? Like, she cannot see this, but like, she truly is repeating her mother's behavior and everything that she said, she repeats exactly the same words. So that's how it works. That's how it passes from generation to generation, making yourself feeling a victim that you also deserve all these things. And these things had to happen to protect your marriage and become stronger. I have no words. The more I come back to these citations and these chapters in the book, the more I understand why she did this and why it's also affecting so many women around in the society. Because that's how we get the behavior, because we got the generational trauma that we have to release and heal. And then when the third accident happens, she finally called Atlas to take her away from Ryle. And when they drew away from the house, she said, "Then the car is moving. I know I need stitches. I know he's taking me to the hospital," I mean Atlas. "But I have no idea why the next words out of my mouth are, 'Don't take me to Mass General. Take me somewhere else.' For whatever reason, I don't want to risk the chance of running into Ryle's colleagues. I hate him. I hate him in this moment more than I ever hated my father. But concern for his career still somehow breaks through the hatred. When I realize this, I hate myself just as much I hate him." Of course she loves him. Of course she does. And she still tries to protect him despite the thing that she's bleeding, like her head is bleeding, she needs to go to the hospital, but she still have concerns about his career, and his reputation. Again, exactly the same thing that happened with her mother, just not making it so public so people don't have gossips about it. The reputation of the family, the reputation of her husband would be safe. It makes me so sick. And then on 273, she finally admits, "I did this to myself. I allowed this happen to me. I am my mother. I want to leave," I whisper. So finally, it took her almost 300 pages to realize that she repeats the same behavior of her mother. And she finally admits that, yeah, she is her mother. In the book, she's about 25 years old, I think, but in the movie, she's a bit older. So I hope for whoever out of you going through, I hope not domestic violence, but any other generational patterns that you had received from your parents, I hope it doesn't take you as much time to realize you're repeating exactly the same behavior patterns that your parents passed to you. And after realizing that she repeats the mistakes of her mom, she comes back to her diary and starts a new entry as an adult, because before that she never wrote anything again since she was like 16, 13, whatever. So as an adult in that diary, she writes, "So naked truth. Brace yourself. I'm in love with a man who physically hurts me. Of all people, I have no idea how I let myself get to this point. There were many times growing up I was wondering what was going through my mother's head in these days my father had hurt her. How she could possibly love a man who had laid his hands on her, a man who repeatedly hit her, repeatedly promised her he would never do it again, repeatedly hit her again. I hate that I can empathize with her now." She finally admits that she's in the same position as her mom, but she still cannot figure out how she still can love the man who physically hit her and then said he would never do again and do it again. And I get her, she's so confused because she was always questioning herself what was going on in her mother's head, and now she's in the same position and she has no clue what to do, what to think about this. And then a page apart, she's saying, "The reasoning is the hardest part of this. It eats me, little by little, wearing down the strength of my hatred lends to me. The reasoning forces me to imagine our future together, and how there are things I could do to prevent that type of anger. I'll never betray him again. I'll never keep secrets from him again. I'll never give him reasons to react that way again. We'll both just have to work harder from now on, for better for us, right?" I know these are the things that once went through my mother's head, but the difference between us two is that she had more to worry about. She didn't have the financial stability that I have. She didn't have the resources to leave him and give me what she would have as a decent shelter. She didn't want to take me away from my father when I was used to living with both parents. I have a feeling reasoning really kicked her ass a time or two. So she admits she has the same pattern as her mom does, but still she's in a different position because, first of all, she has financial stability that her mom didn't have. So she has an option to leave that man and live financially stable on her own and support herself. So this is also what's important for every woman, not to just go to a marriage thinking that the man will provide you and do everything for you, pay for all your bills and everything, and you're just gonna do nothing. Like Lily's mom, she still was working, but she didn't have financial stability on herself to support her daughter and be independent. Lily did, so she had another option to go, and that's why she said, yeah, I see that I repeat mistakes of my mom, but I'm not my mom because I have another option. I have different circumstances and I have more options on deciding whatever to do. Her mom just had one option. She didn't have money to go. She had to stay with this man because she was not financially stable. But Lily had an opportunity to be independent. So this is also one of the things I'm still working on a lot about myself, that I want to reach financial stability. I am financially stable now, but in order to be in a relationship, I want to have my part as financially stable person. So just in any case, I would have a plan B to leave this pattern and be on my own, to stay in my own. So maybe that's the reason yet why I was not yet in relationship before, because I was still working a lot on myself, on my career, to get that financial stability and independence. So for any case that anything would happen, I would not repeat also the same mistake that my mom did, because my mom also didn't have financial stability. So she had no other choice than to stay with my father in the situation that we had. So I would really be an advocate of women having their own financial stability, to have a better option for themselves and their kids if this happens, that you have a child with a man who is physically abusive. So you have an option to be safe and continue living, not depending on the man who physically abuses you. So this is also the thing that I'm constantly working with my therapist, because I'm really afraid to step into a relationship, because I'm afraid to lose my stability, even though like I can support myself financially and everything, but just in case anything happens, I want to be stable to protect myself and my future kids. Unfortunately, I should not have this belief that any man that I would be in a relationship with would hurt me, but this is just generation of trauma that I passed from my parents, and I'm still trying to heal. But just in case, I'm a true advocate of women having their own financial stability, so they can have another choice, another option to go somewhere and have their own life apart the man who hurt her, and not be dependent on him. That's what I'm working on now, having my financial stability, getting my money, so then if the man comes, he would not need to bring me anything but love. In the next part, she finally sees Ryle, and he's saying he's leaving for England. I'll be gone for 3 months. I paid all the bills, so you won't have to worry about when I'm gone. Go back home, Lily. I wouldn't be there, I promise. He turns and begins walking towards the door. It occurs to me that he didn't even try to apologize. He knows that an apology will never take back what he did. He knows that the best thing for us now is separation. It's really hard because I also have some empathy for Ryle, because he seems like a nice person, but he doesn't control his anger. And he understands that he needs to work on this, but the relationship would not work even though he's a good person in general. Like he's a neurosurgeon saving many lives, but he had an accident back in his childhood that really traumatized him and gave him a lot of anger issues. And he has to work on this. But in the same time, you as a reader, you also have empathy for him, because he seems like a nice person. There's just some things and some accidents that happen, and like I get why Lily was so confused around everything, because we as readers, we empathize him, but she is a woman who loves him. She has more empathy for him. And out of this confusion, you would wonder, how would you react in this situation? And when Lily opens up to Alisa, the sister of Ryle, she says she was quiet for a long time as she struggles through everything I've told her. She finally lifts her eyes to mine and squeezes my hand. My brother loves you, Lily. He loves you so much. You have changed his entire life and have made him someone I never thought he could be. As his sister, I wish more than anything that you could find a way to forgive him. But as your best friend, I have to tell you that if you take him back, I will never speak to you again. So here we go. As a part of a family, sister of Ryle loves him so much that she wishes best for him, but for sisterhood, for womanhood, she wishes her best friend not to take back her brother, so he would not hurt her again, because she does not justify anything that he did to her. She wants her best, and this is the true womanhood. This is the true sisterhood, that you wish best your friend, even though knowing that it's your own brother that hurts you. This is the really healing relationship that every woman should have with their friends, to take truth despite it's hurting so much. So Lily finds out she's pregnant. As somebody who grew up in an abusive household, you wish the best for your child to be born in a normal family, in a healthy family, where both parents are not as your own parents. And I'm sure Lily had this dream to have a baby in a healthy family with good husband that would not provide any example of the relationship that she had in her own household. And as this happens, she also realized that her life now is kind of fucked up because she has nowhere to go. She wants to have this baby. She decides to have this baby, but she failed the projection of the happy future that she was projecting for her own child, because it's not going to be the whole family, or it's either one way. It's either to live separately in half and limit the child of having the opportunity to have the whole family, or keep the family but live in an abusive household as the one that she grew up. And in this time, she also realizes it's the same situation her mother was in, but her mother did not have financial stability to have another option. So instead, she has been forced to stay with her father because she had nowhere to go financially. For me, it's one of the big fears that I have that prevents me actually from building a relationship. I'm 25. I've never been in a relationship before because it's the major stop for me to actually enter and trust anybody, because at some point I'm really afraid that I'm going to be stuck in the same situation that my mother was. Being in abusive relationship, still be madly in love with the person who hurts you, and having a child and no financial resources to be independent. So up to now, I take a decision to be single, to build my independence financially and gain the stability. So in any case, I'll have another option to separate myself from this toxic environment and rebuild the life on myself. And I've been working a lot with my psychologist with this, that I should be more trustful, that not all guys are like this, but I still choose up to this date to work on my career more. And once I feel actually stable, to even enter the dating pool, as my friends been pushing me there, I choose actually still work on myself in my finances before even giving chance to anybody. Let's see how it turns out, but this is really where it gets really personal. When you've been seeing your mother going through this and you had no other chance to change anything in your household because you didn't have any finance to live separately, to have another option, you've been just stuck. So having security in being financially stable as a woman, it's really important, because in any case, if you're financially stable by yourself, you have an opportunity to leave. You have an opportunity to have another chance, to have another option. Because if you're not having financial security yourself and you just rely on the finances of your husband, you're fucked. Like, in any point, something might happen. He may not be abusive, he may be fine, and you still rely on his finances, but maybe he, unfortunately, passes away or something happens. A lot of different stories happen in life. But if this happens and you have no financial security on your own, you're fucked. So I really encourage everybody not just to rely that, oh, I need a sugar daddy in my life so that he would pay all my bills, or my husband pays me everything. Be financially secure by yourself. You have to have money to have an option to go. And finally, as Lily comes to her mother to actually confess everything that happened and ask for advice, as she's been through the same situation as her mother did, her mother says the following thing, page 336. I'm sure he does, but he's not loving you the right way. He doesn't love you the way you deserve to be loved. If Rael truly loves you, he wouldn't allow you to take him back. He would make the decision to leave you himself so that he knows for the fact he can never hurt you again. That's the kind of love a woman deserves, Lily. I wish with all my heart that she didn't learn these things from experience. I pull her to me and hug her. For whatever reason, I thought I would have to defend myself when I came to her, but not once I did think I would come over here and learn from her. I should know better. I thought my mother was weak in the past, but she's actually one of the strongest women I know. Mom, I say, pulling back, I want to be you when I grow up. This is really beautiful, because the best thing you can learn from somebody who went through this experience themselves. And sometimes we see women that were not able to leave abusive relationship for some reasons as weak, but in fact they're the strongest women alive because they've been through this and they know the struggle. And Lily says to her mom that she wants to be like her when she grew up, because she's been through a lot of things that she's going through now. And the finishing line here that I note from this book was actually from the note of the author, as she wrote this book after her mother, as she'd been growing up in the same kind of household as Lily. The one thing that really resonated for me, when I finally did reach the point of marriage, the hardest thing I ever had was to tell my biological father that he wouldn't be walking me down the aisle, that I was going to ask my stepfather. I can relate to this a lot because for me, myself, I'm still far away from wedding. I still need to at least start to date somebody, but I made a decision years ago. I'm not speaking with my father for a long time for some reasons. And I also made a decision, if I ever get married, I don't know. I don't have a stepfather. I don't have brothers. So I don't know what kind of wedding it's going to be. If it's going to be like a big or small wedding, whatever. Like, I don't know. I cannot imagine my wedding yet, but I really made a decision that I'd rather walk alone down the aisle, because I went through this alone. I had to go through a lot of challenges that my family put me through, and it's not their fault entirely. It's also the generational trauma that been passed from generation to generation. And as it ends with us, it ends with me as well. That's a making decision to be aware of the patterns that were passed to me by my parents, by their parents, from generation to generation, so that if I ever happen to be in a marriage and have kids, this pattern will end on me and will not be passed to my kids. I really wish this would not happen to anybody, and it would not happen to anybody else. So domestic violence is a topic that's really delicate. I said this for a few times already in this podcast. So I really hope it's not something most of you experience, or not something that you will never experience. I hope so. But women that did go through this, they're the strongest women alive. And I really hope that with this podcast, this is the reason also like I started this podcast, and this is the reason I believe I can make a difference with my podcast, and I can make a difference to many women's life with growth of this podcast, that eventually I'll be able to support and bring some funds to women who need help and support. So if you like this episode, I really hope you will spread a word and help this cause go further and this podcast to grow. So eventually, I also hope one day I will have the chance to invite Colleen Hoover to this podcast to actually speak with her as the author of this book. I really manifest this so that this podcast really will grow big, and I'll be able also not just to speak with her, but also be able to support this cause, because I really support this cause of helping women to go through this challenge of domestic violence, because unfortunately many of women have been raised in this households or have been dealing with relationship like this. So it's not something they should go through alone, and they should see another option here. I actually want to end this podcast with the first sentence that you will find in this book on the very first page. So Colleen Hoover dedicated this book for my father, who tried his very best not to be his worst, and for my mother, who made sure we never saw him at his worst. This is it. Thank you for being here, and I really would appreciate if you give support to this podcast so we make this message spreading and we grow to the point that we actually can make a difference with this podcast. Thank you. Stay safe, and don't forget to subscribe and support this podcast, because together we grow and make difference. Bye.